Target CEO Brian Cornell announced some perhaps unsurprising news. He'll be stepping down early next year after more than a decade leading the giant retailer. Cornell's time leading Target has been a world of woke trouble for the chain, starting back in 2016 when they made the fateful policy change that allowed customers to use the changing room of whichever gender they decided to be that day. The policy change caused major backlash, with over 1.5 million Americans pledging to boycott Target. In more recent years, the retailer leaned hard into promoting Pride Month. They backed off some this year, but it was too little too late. What could Cornell's departure mean for the retailer going forward? Joining me now to take a look at this and other corporate woke news is Will Hild, the Executive Director of Consumers Research. Will, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Great to be with you.
So I have to ask you, were you surprised by the Target CEO's decision to leave?
No, I'm not surprised at all. If you look at the stock price and the steady declines that they've had, even far and above the post-pandemic declines that we've seen from a lot of companies. And then given the controversies that the company has stepped in over and over and over again, despite really no reason to, other than just masochism and a devotion to the woke religion, it's not surprising. They had to make a change. Now, the question will be, does the next CEO make these same mistakes, or are they able to right the ship and get Target back to just providing goods and services at good prices?
Yeah, it's funny. There's the oft-repeated phrase, if you spend a lot of time on Twitter, which I don't recommend really, but it's go woke, go broke, right?
Right.
And first, what are some of those, you mentioned some of those instances, besides the one I mentioned, how did Target, go woke, and has their bottom line suffered, it seems like it has, since they waded into that woke pool?
Yeah, I think the sense that they were woke built up over time, unlike some of the big blowups we've seen, like with Budweiser, for example. This was more of like a Cracker Barrel situation where there was just a steady stream of them stepping into woke issues, as you mentioned, having both genders be allowed in the bathroom. But then you had the big instigating event, I think, that really began the decline was when they added child's tuck underwear, which I gather to believe is bathing suits. Bathing suits for children to tuck their genitalia to look like the opposite gender, which even describing it, you feel dirty. That even such a thing exists is an indictment of our society. But the fact that they were putting those for sale at the front of the stores across the country, even in deep red Bible Belt states like Texas and Arkansas, I think got people to realize that the culture of this company was really antagonistic and offensive to most Americans and certainly to Christian believers.
Yeah, there's a couple things going on here. It seems that whoever is the consultants in Manhattan who are advising these policies, or wherever, different various headquarters and large regional hubs with the, people fresh out of a liberal college making policies, there's a disconnect between the actual consumer, the mother of five who's going to the store to shop there. But now we've seen that conservatives, and not just conservatives, by the way, a lot of apolitical people are frustrated by these kinds of things, and they're boycotting. And I've wondered at times if boycotts work, but it seems like in the case of Target, they made an impact. What is that power of the consumer to influence corporate decision, marketing, messaging, especially when it comes to this issue, Pride Month in June, et cetera?
That is such a great question, because I do think there has been a total phase shift in the efficacy of boycotts. We saw when people would try to boycott companies like Disney in the 90s, it really didn't go anywhere. The culture of the executives is really what determined the decisions that they made, and it really didn't have much of an effect on the company when, centralized leaders in Christian denominations, whether Catholic or Protestant, would call for a boycott. I think the shift here is two items. One is social media has changed dramatically the speed with which people can communicate with each other about what the company's doing, and then communicate with each other about doing something about it. What we saw out of Bud Light, for example, was a lot of people making fun of Bud Light, people joking about going to pick up a Bud Light and then deciding, maybe they don't want other people to think they're gay or something like that. So that kind of ridicule on social media keeps these boycotts fun for consumers to engage in and makes them effective in spreading the message across a broad swath of the public. The other difference, I think, is in general terms, the reservoir of frustration with corporations amongst consumers is way, way higher than it once was. And I think that's also a play here. When people were frustrated with Disney, for example, on woke issues, proto-woke issues in the 90s, it was sort of seen as a niche cultural issue. Now, because so many companies have poked their consumers in the eye for so long, it takes very little before people really want to see vengeance. They want to basically make their will known against the corporation that's doing it. So I think those two changes have had a radical change. And I think it's an indication that consumers should really feel empowered in this current environment and not shy for letting whatever their viewpoints are. Even if they feel like they're not in the majority of the general public, they shouldn't be shy about communicating their values to corporations and demanding that at least they're respected, even if they aren't agreed with.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's great. And it's encouraging to our audience that, you may have felt ignored for a while, but they can't ignore you any longer. Will, you follow this issue closely. Let's say you're hired by Target as a consultant. They're being boycotted by the right and the left, actually. They've been boycotted by both sides. What do you tell these companies how they win over Americans, win over that trust, if you're the latest consultant for Bud Light or Target or whoever it may be?
Well, there's really two strategies. One is you can just go to the lowest common denominator with all of your products. So you try to find the thing that is either unattackable, like I think Target has been trying to push a lot of July 4th type stuff, a lot of Americana. That's harder for the left even to attack, even though the left is kind of not the ones that usually have big flags and stuff in front of American flags in front of their houses. They find it hard to attack, right? That's one strategy. It doesn't seem like it's working for Target, at least so far. Another strategy is, frankly, just start serving a completely underserved community, which is committed Christians. I think if Target, they shouldn't change the T to a cross, but I think if they were to put in like nativity scenes during Christmas, even just outline silhouettes, everyone knows what the holiday is. It's not we're not celebrating the winter solstice. We're celebrating the birth of Jesus. Right. And I think if they were to have displays which had nativity scenes around their Christmas stuff, that would attract a lot of consumers who right now don't trust Target, even when they don't see active wokeness, because of the history of the company. They don't take it seriously that the company has cleaned up their act. And so I think they may need to do overt overtures towards Christian conservatives or just general conservatives to let them say, listen, we get it. We messed up. That was wrong of us. We shouldn't have excluded you culturally. We are actively including you. It's funny. They love these DEI departments. The I stands for inclusivity. They're some of the least inclusive people
What about
out there.
including Christians? Well,
Yeah,
what about
exactly.
including
what
Christians?
About including Christians? Right.
It's a great point. We got to leave it there.